Greetings, everybody. This is Thunder Hands at the Native American Taoist.com. Well, like I always say, I start talking and think about naming these things later, but I had a lot of thoughts coming to me again, as usual. And today the thoughts have to do with oppression, freedom, and free spirit, or oppression versus freedom, free spirit. But I'm going to talk about a lot of other things that I talked about before. Sometimes I talk about things that I talked about before, but it might be in a different context, or it might add additional light to the subject. Um, so anyway, I was thinking about oppression, and I was thinking about how oppression is actually suppression. And that would be suppression of your true self. And then I thought about being a free spirit, because oppression of your true self is not being a free spirit. And it's not being free, and it's not having freedom. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about in regards to being a free spirit or being free is acceptance of the shadow self. And actually I could put that in the title because I think that's an important component of this whole topic of discussion. And you'll see how that plays out here as I talk about it. But the shadow self, sometimes it was in Lakota and in different cultures, but in Lakota it was referred to as Nagi, or the ghost self. And psychoanalysts, or psychologists like Jung and Freud talked about it, but Jung was mainly into that side. He knew more about that side, I think, than anybody. But the shadow side is something that the Lakota say has to be accepted, integrated into the whole personality. And then we also have different takes on it. And before I've talked about the yin and yang within oneself, like the feminine is the yin and the yang is the masculine, or male and female, which we all have in us. Both male and female have the opposite component. And I was reading something about how the female component for the male is the one that comes through and reveals things. And maybe it's the other way for the female, kind of like a spirit guide or another part of oneself. So that's interesting. But anyway, that has to be accepted, because as Lakota say, if you don't accept it, it'll give you trouble. And you have to integrate it into your personality. And that shadow side is the side of us that we don't like, or there's something about it that we reject, or there's something about it that disturbs us. In reality, we may love it, but there's a part of us that doesn't want to face up to it, or doesn't want to accept it, or whatever. But when we do, we become more whole, and we become more of a free spirit, and we suppress ourselves less. We're not oppressed anymore by a thought or a part of ourselves. And like I say, that ghost self, or that shadow self, or you could even call it the yin self, because that's dark, is there, and so we need to address it, we need to accept it, we need to embrace it, we need to love it. Okay? Now, as I look at some of the characters and figures on the world stage, like say leaders or people that are exhibiting destructive behavior maybe, or trying to suppress freedoms, to me those people have not come into contact with their shadow side. In other words, they're suppressing their shadow side. And so what's happening is that it's going to express itself in a destructive way. And I hope that makes sense to you, but it does to me. And like I say, anything that I say here is strictly Thunder's thoughts, but I tend to look into all aspects of everything that I can, so, and how it applies not to just us as individuals, but how it applies to the larger stage of life. And so another thing about this yin-yang energy within us all is that it creates a balance or an imbalance, you know, upon acceptance or non-acceptance of parts of it. So we need to look at that, and we need to realize how that we can use that to our best advantage. And I talked about inner alchemy and meditation, and I talked about how that's all based, like Shiva and Shakti, the two gods, goddess entities in the Hindu Godhead. It's very interesting because that embraces this whole male-female yin-yang thing within us all. And that's why it's used in deep esoteric meditation techniques. Those two energies kind of weave their way up the energy channel in the back, which I talked about with meditation. And it creates a balance in yoga, which is union with, creates this balance or this intertwining of the yin and yang energies. And another thing about this is that I've noticed before that, say like in relationships, if a man is not in tune with that yin energy or that female energy inside of himself, how the hell can he relate to his partner, a woman, if he doesn't know that part of that energy in himself? And the same thing with a woman. If she is not in touch with that yang energy, then she may not be able to have a decent relationship with a male. So whether you can or whether you cannot is something that remains to be seen in your personal case or your personal life. But I'm just saying that I think that it helps when we embrace, you know, both sides of ourselves and the shadow side. And this is all connected. This is all connected. And like I always say, it's all about energy. It's totally about energy. It's totally about the energy within us and the energy in the cosmos. And so getting back to the effect of it in the world at large, if you have leaders that are not in tune, they're not enlightened, they don't have any idea or any kind of concept about this, they're going to reject a part of themselves that they might feel is dark, but that part of themselves is going to rear up in ways they never thought of, destructively. And we see that in the world today. In fact, I would be willing to say that most people on the planet, a high percentage of people on the planet, do not have any idea of shamanistic or esoteric thought about the things that I'm talking about right now. In other words, their own inner energies, accepting the shadow side. Because in a sense, like I say in my book, Listen to the Wind, Speak from the Heart, what you hate, you must love. And if you hate a part of yourself, you must love it. You must embrace it. You must bring it into the fold, so to speak. Excuse me. You must bring it into your whole being. Because then when you do, it releases all kinds of other blocks in your life. And if people did this on a global scale, it would release all the blocks and destructive behavior in life. That's my opinion, that's my theory, that's my feeling. That's Thunder's feeling. So when you accept this part of yourself, when you realize it, when you realize the Nagi, the ghost self, the shadow side, and that in combination with the yin and yang energies and union and yoga with it all, because in the Shiva Shakti, Shiva being the male and Shakti being the female, you have the lingam and the yoni, which are the consecutive male and female reproductive organs, but they're shown as one, okay? They're shown as one. So that means that there's union, that you have to have this union of these energies. And what it does is it frees you up totally, because you actually start feeling really good and really healthy about yourself and about your surroundings, because it's about acceptance. And when you accept yourself, when you accept darker parts of yourself and other parts of yourself that you have feared, that fear disappears and that tension disappears. And you feel just excellent. You feel better about yourself. You feel better about the world. And you come to a realization that if everybody did this, if everybody knew about this, if everybody merged these energies and accepted, and I mean every holy book that you look into and every Godhead that you look into has these aspects. The feminine and the male aspect, just like in tribal tradition, it's grandfather and grandmother earth, grandfather sky. It's the yin and the yang. That's why I get so, not disgusted or disturbed, but when people that are religiously oriented, let's say, they keep referring to God as He. I'm glad you think that there's that type of differentiation beyond the duality. I mean, it's both in the duality. So above the duality or outside the duality, I mean, it's almost ridiculous trying to put you know, a sexual personification or I don't know what but it's he, she, or it's beyond he, she. It's the cosmos. But it manifests itself as yin and yang, he, she, so it has to be both. And beyond that, it has to encompass both. I guess that's what I'm saying. So that's why we fall into these patriarchal traps, with religion, where it's a male-dominated society. And the women they feel that. So that's why they need to be in touch with their yang energy. And tribal societies were matriarchal. In other words, they were female oriented. They weren't male oriented. That Judeo-Christian ethic came later. So whatever your belief system is, whether it's Christian or Jewish or Islamic or Taoist or Native American or pagan or whatever, I guarantee you every one of them has these components that aren't realized by the people that practice them. Okay? They just don't realize that the metaphors are there. Just like in Christianity, you have Mother Mary, you have Christ, I believe Christ or Jesus or Yeshua was an embodiment of balance between these energies. But you have Mary Magdalene. These are metaphors, as well as possibly actual people. So again, you have the Hindu, you have the Christian, you have the Jewish. The Jewish have what they call the Shekinah, which is the female aspect. Very powerful. So it doesn't matter what your belief system is, because it's all metaphor anyway. It's all archetype. If you read Joseph Campbell, you realize that it comes from somewhere else. And previously I talked about the conscience and how that can also play into this, because if you haven't accepted that part of yourself that is darker or the shadow side or whatever, then you're gonna have problems with what they call the quote unquote conscience, which is just conditioning. There is a higher aspect, but I'm not going to get into that because I have no idea. And it's not really called a conscience, it's called essence, like I said before. So anyway, it's good that we know all these things, because then we can work with them in our lives. Okay? It doesn't matter what religion. When we realize that it's all just belief systems, that the basic thing is that yin and yang energy pervades the universe. And to see again, it's these people that don't realize this, that are causing problems because they're not in balance. They're causing problems on the planet. The leaders, the people. That's why I say, when I say people have to wake up and become enlightened, they have to do this through meditation and yoga and whatever esoteric shamanistic ritual, prayer, whatever way you use. But I taught some meditation techniques earlier if you want to look into my archives here on the YouTube channel. And I will be teaching some more. But it's movement of energy and it's realization of energy. And so in order for us to have a healing on this planet and not to be oppressed and suppressed, we need to be free spirits, and in order to be free spirits, we need to be completely in touch with our shadow side and have integrated it into our personality. And the only reason that it's called a shadow side doesn't mean it's bad, or doesn't mean, dark doesn't necessarily mean bad. Yin in the yin yang sign is the female, so it's not bad to me, because I love that energy and I love that whole thing, on the physical level. I love women, I guess is what I'm saying, because they're a balance to me. But I love them because I love that part that's inside of me. I understand them better. And I'll run into women that have no clue at all about I guess they call it the tomboy side or the yang side or their father's side, because it comes from the mother-father thing. That's prevalent. I mean, that's where it all comes from. The mother-father DNA or influence or whatever. That's why we all have it, obviously. Of course, it goes way beyond that, but in order for this planet to heal again, and for us to feel good about ourselves, see, that erases guilt. I mean, once you bring this into the light, once you bring this shadow part of yourself into the light, it's no longer a shadow part, is it? It's a part of the whole. Okay? So get in touch with it and look at parts of yourself that you have not wanted to look at before. Excuse me. Look at parts of yourself that you are hiding from, or that you really don't want to look at, and just integrate it. It's no big deal. You look at it and you integrate it. You accept it, you embrace it and love it. You can go on for years ignoring it, but it's what good is that? What good is it? And this shadow side is something that, is suppressed. And when you release that suppression and oppression, and see, they try to do this to us in society too. They try to use that technique of division instead of inclusion, or separation instead of togetherness. See, that's what I'm trying to say here. So what affects us internally is, as above, so below. Sorry if I keep hitting my microphone here with my hands. I tend to gesture a lot. As above, so below. So this is all on higher energy levels too, all this energy that I'm talking about. So you need to think about these things maybe. I mean, you don't need to, but it might be good to. Because then we can all be a little bit more balanced on the planet. It just causes so much problems, so many problems. Not being in tune, with what we call the self. You have to start somewhere. And I really want to impress upon you the good feeling that is the overall good feeling that you get when you look at a part of yourself and just accept it and say, hey, I love you, I love it, I love that part of myself. How can I integrate it? Well, you integrate it by just embracing it. And you know what? It works itself out. Once you accept it into your heart and into your being and into your aura, it works, this wholeness works itself out. You don't even have to try. The acceptance is the big thing. Look at it, accept it. Now sometimes you might have problems wondering what this shadow part of yourself is, and with that you just need to go within and think about, what parts of myself do I consider parts that I don't want to look at, like maybe I'm not giving enough, or maybe I'm judgmental, and you don't like that part of yourself. So you have to figure out, well, is that part of my shadow self, or is that just... So anyway, I want you to think about these things. I don't have all the answers, but if you think about this stuff, then you can see the bigger picture of the world at large, and this Maya, or this illusion that we live in, and then how us as individuals affect that bigger picture and can have some kind of input with our thoughts into this bigger picture, this bigger reality. And then we get into the mass, consciousness, or the collective unconscious, as Jung said, or Freud, or whoever. The collective unconscious, or the collective conscious. We have more input into it if we're balanced. We see things, we rise above it. I believe there isn't anything that isn't possible. And once you accept the shadow side of yourself, you free up all kinds of other areas that have to do with acceptance. Like maybe you're not receiving enough love. Or maybe you're not receiving enough prosperity in your life, money, whatever. Or just goodness, or blessings, people call it, or grace. Maybe you're not receiving this into your life because you're blocking it. And that's a destructive part of not accepting this inner shadow self, and this inner, integrating into the whole, integrating your personality. So as soon as you accept whatever part of it that is this shadow side, and again the Lakota call it Nagi, then that's when things free up on other levels and start flowing to you. Things start flowing to you through the universe, through the cosmos, because then you're open to accepting. Okay, you're open to accepting ideas, and issues dissolve, because you say, well, if I accept the shadow part of myself, and that's one of the hardest things to accept, maybe, well, then why can't I accept other things that are beneficial to me, that will be beneficial to me? And I think that just happens once you go through this process. So anyway, this video is getting kind of long, and I think I said what I needed to say for now. I get inspired and I just talk about things. So I want you to check out my website down here, the Native American Taoist, and that's spelled TAOIST.com, the Native American Taoist.com. Click on that. You can find my books, Listen to the Wind, Speak from the Heart, and Emergence, which is a novel about twin souls, male-female natives, and how they, and it has a lot to do with what I've been talking about today, because they are both whole. And it's also a great book for imparting, for me to impart through a novel wisdom on different levels. And then Listen to the Wind, Speak from the Heart is just a more outright spirit help book, I call it. And you can find these things through the Native American Taoist, because on that side is a connection to Spirit of Crazy Horses, which is where that is. And then I also have Apache Tracker, so it's like a triune thing. It's almost like a network. So check it out, and I appreciate the donations that I get. It helps me with the show, and there is a donation button on there also. So I guess I'll end it there for today and say blessings to you all and love to you all, and may you integrate your shadow self, and may your yin and yang be balanced. And so I guess I'll close for now and say adios, and later on, thunder out.